Oh, all right. So this is going to be a good one because the new year is coming so fast, and we want to talk about how to get more done in 2018. Wouldn't that be nice if we could get more done? So we're going to talk about that today, and I think this is going to give us some momentum. So I made some notes. If you see me looking over here, it's that I'm looking at my notes. I don't want to forget anything. And then after we sort of go over this, I'll take your questions, and we'll go from there. So, okay, so let's be honest. Let's get really uncomfortable for a second and be honest. Uh, the reason that we don't get as much done as we would like to isn't because we don't have the time. It's because we're uncomfortable usually doing things. And research actually has shown this to be true, that people who have less free time can get more done. It just depends on how much energy you have. It's all about that energy. It is all about that energy. So I'm here to give you some energy every time I see you. I'm here to pour it through the computer. Hopefully you feel that. But we need to look at a few things. We're going to talk about a couple logistic things that are going to help you get more done. And we're also going to talk about some of the mental stuff that hopefully we can get over, so that we can get progress. You see, results don't lie. And you've probably heard me say that before, but I know so many people in my own life, and I'm sure you have people like this in your life, where year after year, every time you see them, whether it's at Christmas or you see them, at your Pilates class, whenever you get to talking to them, they complain about what's not happening. And I know so many people like this. And the thing is that when we start to take responsibility, it is so amazing, actually. It's the opposite of weak. It actually makes us strong. When we start to take responsibility for all of our results, it's incredible how we can then actually move forward, because we're not blaming some person who put us down, or the reason that we don't have a resource, and we're saying, oh, well, I would be doing it, but, I have 2 kids. It's like, what does that mean? Or I would be doing it, but, my father passed away. It's like, well, those are all things that are hard. There's circumstances that we have nothing, we can't control. And there are resources that we might not have, but we have ourself. And the thing is that they've actually been able to study this and see it's all about more energy. And so people will say, if I had 12 days in a week, if I had 9 days in a week, I'd get more done. If I had 40 hours in a day instead of 24, I'd get so much more done. And then they'll put people in positions where they'll test this and they'll give people more time. And there's not much more that gets done. It has to do with the shift of the energy. And so I want to talk about this, and I want to give you some strategies, because you've got to learn how to push your own buttons. You are wired a certain way. And there are things that you can do like that are going to give you more energy. When your iPhone battery starts to go to red and you're on 8%, that's an uncomfortable feeling. I know for myself. So I pre-plan my strategy of like how I'm going to keep that phone charged. So every night I plug it in, right? That's one routine. And then during the day, I make sure that I plug it in the car. And then if I go to a meeting, sometimes I'll like charge it during the meeting. Like that's how on top of that battery power I am, because I know that I'm going to need it. I'm going to need it to be working. I'm going to need it if my kids' school calls. And so there's that. Okay. But your own batteries, how much time do you spend thinking about making sure that your own batteries are fully charged? I mean, do you spend 5 minutes on that a day, or do you spend no time on it? So most people don't spend any time on it. And so they wake up and they just kind of like, they're going on fumes, and they're just hoping. They're just hoping that something good's going to happen to them. They're just hoping that some conversation will be inspiring enough that it'll carry them through. And they're just hoping that by Friday, somehow, by the grace of God, they'll just have found this like mystery energy and they'll get stuff done, right? And then the new year comes and they're like, wow, I didn't get that much done. And then people feel overwhelmed and frustrated, which doesn't obviously give you so much energy. So I sort of make it my job to make sure that I give myself that energy. And so there are so many different things you can do. You can listen to a playlist, and some of this is going to be repeat because, you know, there are certain people, like it's on their, you know, they have a certain go-to mantra, and I talk about a few things. So some of this is going to be stuff that you've heard me say before because it's my like go-to piece of advice. But we are going to talk about some other things as well and some real logistics. But I just want to reiterate this because it is so important. You have to take responsibility for your energy. And you have to think about it like if you're, and I've said this to you probably too, but if you're on, every kid has tried walking up the down escalator, right? And when you're walking up the down escalator, you've got to stay ahead of it, because if you even just stay where you are, you don't stay where you are, you go down, right? And so I feel like people wake up every single day and we just are at the whim. We're at the mercy of, you know, what's going to happen. And unfortunately, there's a lot of like stuff like gravity, and people kind of tend to, misery loves company. And so you might watch the news and that might kind of bring you down, and you might have a stressful conversation, or you might get stuck in traffic. And by the end of the day, you might not have any energy to work on your side hustle. I also want to remind you, every single thing I've ever done that took off and became more successful than I ever could dream of was always a side hustle. My podcast was a side hustle to my music business. My music was a side hustle to what I was doing in all my day jobs. And then my licensing agency was a side hustle to my music business at first, when I was just me as an artist. And the classes I started teaching was a side hustle to running a music licensing agency and being my own artist. And then the podcast was like a total side hustle. And at the same time, I have 3 kids. So they say if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And I get that now because I am so busy. And the truth is, I don't even like when people say that. I feel like people, they sort of see it as like a badge of honor to be so busy. It's not, you know, like if you're really working smart, you should be able to get a lot of stuff done. And so it really comes down to energy. I think the reason that we don't get stuff done is because we're uncomfortable. Like, and I want to go into this a little bit more. If every time you sit down to write a song, you berate yourself with all these comments about how it's not good enough and all of those things, why would you enjoy doing it? Why would you want to sit down? If every time you go to email a music supervisor, you have these thoughts like you're going to be a burden, or you're annoying, or why should you bother, or why would they even listen? How much energy does that give you? Why would you want to keep doing that stuff when every time you set aside time to do it, you feel awful? You wouldn't. You would just stop doing it. And so the reason that we're not wanting to do stuff, or the reason we tell ourselves we're too busy and we spend our time not fully doing the stuff that we know we need to get done, is because it makes us uncomfortable. So I want you to think of a few things. First of all, good enough is really good enough, right? And most of this comes down to overthinking. I did a talk last Thursday at this Miracle Mile toy hall. It's like the cutest place. It used to be an old theater, and now in the front of it is a toy store, in the back of it's a theater. Anyway, it was really nice to meet a bunch of people who listened to the podcast, and some of our community members were there too. And this one woman, she stood up at the end and she said, I have a record and I haven't put it out, and I am trying to, I keep looking at the artwork, and I'm not sure if I should get this one song mastered better. And I just keep finding, that I just haven't gotten it out. And, do you think I should spend more money on this, or do you think I should spend more money on that? And I said to her, I'm a really big fan of beta. Like, I love that whole concept that people have put things out there. I remember when Twitter was first out in the world and it was like the beta version. I'm a big fan of not overthinking and not being perfect and getting things done and getting things moving. When water stops moving, it's stagnant and it becomes poisonous. It literally gets sick from it. You have to keep moving. And so we have to sort of stop being so uncomfortable by being kinder to ourselves, by being gentler to ourselves. When you're working on something, remember that good enough is amazing, actually. It's more than good enough. It's fantastic. Because if you can get to good enough and then you can put that song out, or you can set up the co-write, or you can show your lyrics to someone, or you can get that EP out there and then work on the next one. You're going to get to greatness by being good enough. And if you don't let yourself be good enough, you're going to stop, and it's going to be like that stagnant water, and you're not going to move forward. And so part of getting more done and part of time hacks is being willing to have more grace, okay, with ourselves, because the more we have energy and the more excited we are to get stuff done and the less we beat ourselves up, I promise you're going to find that time. Because when you love something, you find the time. I remember when I was about to get married and I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to plan this wedding? You know, it's going to take so much time. And then of course I spent hours and hours and hours and hours planning the wedding. I was, you know, looking at venues and dresses and bands and buffet, like food and caterers. And when the wedding was done, I thought, oh my God, what do I do now with all that time? Like I had all those extra hours I was dedicating to planning this wedding. And I remember when we first had our first baby and then the second baby and the third baby, thinking, how on earth will we find the time? But when you love something, you find the time. When something makes you feel awful, you won't find the time, and your brain will tell you why you don't have the time, because it's trying to protect you from feeling terrible. So I want you to make it a much more healthy experience. And when you make good enough, and you allow yourself to get in the habit of getting things written and setting up co-writes and getting in the studio and producing songs and sending emails to supervisors, it becomes less and less uncomfortable and more momentum comes in. I want you to remember that the most critical piece of this pie is getting that feedback, right? So as you're moving towards your target, the only way you know where your target is by getting that feedback. And so we need to be in a habit of putting things out there and then listening for feedback. So somebody else, so I told this girl, just to sort of sum that up, I told this girl that she was overthinking her record and that she should just put it out in the world. And we talked about kind of the stuff that we just talked about now. And then this other woman stood up, and she's a graphic designer. And she said that actually she had had some really cool things happen, and this publisher wanted to publish a picture book that she had done, and she was illustrating it. And she said it was really hard because she got some strong feedback from her editor. And she said, how do you handle feedback? Because it can be really devastating, because your art, it's not your shirt. It's not somebody saying, you know, I don't like your shirt, or I don't like your house, or I don't like your watch. It feels like it's a part of you. It feels like it's like your child. And so she said, it's just so hard and it makes me not want to keep going. And I said to her, well, I want you to think about this. There's a few things, and this is part of what helps us keep going. I said to her, first of all, you're so much more than this one page of your book, or even this book, right? We're more than our age. We're more than this song that we're going to write. We're more than this EP. I was in a yoga class, I remember, years ago, and we sat down on the mat, and the teacher said something I just will never forget. I've never heard anybody else say this. She said, okay, get comfortable, you know, find your breath, sit on the mat, feel your sit bones. She said, now I want to invite you to take your hand and zip off your ego and just put it right next to you, just right next to you. And when you're done with the class, you're more than welcome to put it back on, and it'll be there for you when you leave if you want it, right? And I thought, it's like fascinating, because there's a part of us, there are moments in our lives where we start to get in touch with the part of us that's bigger than, I am 38, I am a mom, I am 5'8", I live in this zip code, I have this color skin, this color eye. Like, those are aspects of what we are, but there's this other dimension that's so much bigger. And what we do is we identify with these pieces. And I know people, and I'm sure you do too, I know people who are so identified wholeheartedly with their job, or with one part of their job, that if somebody commented on them and it was negative, they would be devastated. They might not make it, right? When they're losing sight that it's okay. Like, this is just one aspect of one tiny crumb, of one tiny speckle on like the big picture of what you are. So there's that. You can put that into perspective, and you're so much more powerful and incredible And this is just one aspect. So you don't have to be devastated. It's just your ego, right? The other thing though, is that we should have more patience. It all comes down to being kind to ourselves, right? Like my daughter, she's learning to tie her shoe. The other daughter is learning to like write her letters, and they make mistakes constantly. And there's this sort of like unspoken, obvious amount of patience, because me nor my husband expects them to have it right. And so we just keep encouraging them, like, just keep trying. It's fine. It's totally fine. Of course it's fine. We don't expect the opposite. We don't expect them to get it perfect or to have it all together right away. And so we are very, very, very unkind to ourselves. You know, if somebody criticizes something, if we get feedback we don't like, we say to ourselves, oh my God, forget it. I can't keep going. I mean, clearly I didn't get the results I wanted. And this person, you know, thinks of me in a certain way now, or I think of me in a certain way now, as opposed to how I look at it my whole life. When somebody gives me feedback, I welcome that. Even if the person is like, you know, there's like haters out there. There's people who like, you know, troll the internet and say not nice things. And I don't hate those people. I mean, they're not nice. But when it comes to myself, you know, we started my podcast a year ago. I had plenty of interesting comments come through. And I had, you know, tons and tons of very positive comments. But there were definitely those people who were like, she's so positive, or she's so this, or she talks too much, or she shouldn't do this, or she should do this more. But to me, I really want to listen, because I want to grow, because I'm not afraid that this is the best I can do. I know that I can do better. I want to do better. And I have this sort of respect for the work, and I want to be great. I don't want to be good. So obviously there's room to grow. And so I want to hear it. Now, there's going to be people who stand out and they're just really nasty, and maybe nobody else agrees. And then you can take that with a grain of salt and say, maybe that's just this person's opinion. But if people consistently give you a certain piece of feedback, certain direction, that's probably awesome, right? Because it's an answer key of something you can do to get closer to your target. So that's a good thing, you know? And so we can be kinder to ourselves, and we can get more done. And this really all goes into time hacks and getting more done. Because if the process of getting things done, it was more fun and we could let it be good enough. And then if the process of meeting up with people or getting people's feedback was more, you know, it was just more thought of with a shift of, wow, this is all cool. You know, like I'm actually getting a gift because I'm going to get somebody's feedback, and I of course I want to grow. If you look at, you know, people like Serena Williams, you look at people who have mastered something, there's a respect for, of course I didn't assume that I was going to get it the first 3 times I went out, you know, I knew that. And there's something about it which actually seems insane when you think about how frustrated people get so quickly, because you're like, wait a minute, what did you think? Like, did you think you were supposed to be, you know, like Beyonce? Like, was she built in a day, like her career, like, or even her ability, or anybody who you look up to? Like, did you think that's supposed to happen like that? And if you did, you're really going to set yourself up to feel miserable. So all of that has to sort of come in, right? Now, here's a couple other just like logistical things. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would wake up. I wake up now at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I get a head start on the day because my kids wake up at like 7, and I got to get them to school by 8. And then my day really starts at 9. So I try to wake up at 5 so I can have a cup of coffee, meditate, or take a walk, or do whatever else I think is going to push my buttons to get some energy into my soul. And then I try to get to work, and I get excited to like rip it open, because I take full responsibility for what's supposed to happen to my life. Like, I don't assume that like something else will just come along. And so I'm like ready every day to like think, what else can I do? What's the next right action? What's the next right step I could take? So waking up early, you have to know yourself. Like, what is your groove? So for some people, it's going to be burning the midnight oil. I have friends who can stay up till 4 in the morning and they can just power through. So that's not me. And I can do it more in the morning. So waking up early could be a habit that you could get into. And even if you have a day job, you could find that every morning for an hour or two, you're killing it, you're crushing it. And you so underestimate what little small actions that are consistent over time can turn around and bring into your life. So maybe it's the morning. Another thing is you need to schedule the time. Like when Sunday comes, I'm super clear about what I'm doing for the week. And when Friday comes, I assess what happened, and whatever didn't get done, I then make sure to put on the schedule. So scheduling the time, you can't just find the time. You have to carve it out. You have to make it happen, put stuff on the schedule. And another thing that makes that happen, I posted on Instagram a few weeks ago. I said, plan backwards and hustle forwards. So begin with the end in mind, and then planning backwards from that. What do you need to do in order to get there at the end of the day? When I was writing music when I was only writing music, and that was my 100% thing, I was thinking all the time about, okay, well, I'm working backwards from the goal of having an EP done every 3 months. Every 3 months, I want to have 5 songs. So that means I need to write 12 songs in 3 months. And that means I'm going to write a song every week. And then at the end of 3 months, I'm going to have recorded 5 of those 12 songs. I want to write 12 so that I can have more fun and not have the pressure that I'm writing 5 and all 5 have to be amazing. I want to be in the zone, and I want to be letting go of all that critical thinking. So I'm going to write 12 songs and go through this process of practice and being creative so that of the 12, I'll pick the best 5. And so looking backwards from that, I would say, okay, if I want to have 5 songs recorded by the end of this 3rd month, then where I am now, okay, I'm going to book a co-write here, a co-write here, a producer session here, a producer session here. And by the end of 3 months, I'm going to have these songs written. I'm going to have worked on some lyrics because I'm going to have written on my own. I'm going to have done some research. I'm going to have done some co-writing. I'm going to have producer dates in the books. And by the end of 3 months, I'm going to have 5 songs done. And that gives me another thing to look forward to, that in 3 months, I'll have another EP of 5 songs. And then I'll be emailing producers and music supervisors to say, do you need this? What do you think? And working backwards from that, I used to make myself little crib notes every single day. And I would say, what do I have right now that I could send out? And I would say, who are 5 people I don't yet know who I might send my music to? And I would Google ad agencies, and I would Google Gray, Ogilvy, Deutsch, TBWA Hyatt Day, Saatchi and Saatchi, David and Goliath, 72 and Sunny, and I would Arnold Worldwide, and Y&R, Young and Rubicam, and Weed and Kennedy. And I would start to get to know these agencies around the world. And I would say 5 a day. I'm going to come up with 5 a day. And so I would Google and find out that each one of the ones I just mentioned, Ogilvy, Gray, Deutsch, all those, BBDO, DDB, all these agencies have like hundreds of offices. They have a Milan office. They have a Utah office. They have an office in Seattle. They had offices everywhere, every one of them. So I was like, I can come up with 5 a day, and I come up with 5 a day, and then I would send a personalized sweet email with something that I thought was my best, one link to what I thought that I should send that they might need. For ad agencies, obviously I would send sort of like fun, party in a box, just happy, feel-good songs. And I would send a link to like 3 of them and let them know that they were easy to clear. And I would send something really just like friendly, and I would do it every day. And these small, consistent steps, I was working backwards always from the thought of, ultimately, it's a really simple goal. I wanted to be paid to do what I love. I wanted to license my songs. And so I would think to myself, well, the best way to do that is to have the most music being produced as I can. And I will be then in a habit of writing music, so that it'll be getting better and better and better. And while I'm writing, I need to be carving out the time to be finding more people. And yes, I would also intermix my own submissions where I would be finding people and sending emails. I'd intermix sending emails to licensing agents because I never was against having a licensing agent. Even when I had a licensing agent, I was also pitching on my own, and I would say to them, do you mind if I pitch on my own? And they would say, no. In fact, if you need help, if something came through, we'll do the paperwork for you so you can make sure that you're like definitely getting covered and nothing, seems unprofessional, and we'll take less than our normal commission for it. I'm like, great. So like, it was always me. It was always on me. I never ever thought like, oh, I have an agent, so I'm going to sit here now I'm going to wait for the grass to grow, you know? So it's not that difficult. It's just about carving it out into smaller steps. So it's taking this big goal and breaking it into smaller pieces. So the goal is, and again, you know, with Ari and with other parts of your career, you're going to have different conversations. You're going to talk about touring, you're going to talk about publicity, all that stuff. And even with publicity, you know, if you were in my office right now, there's sort of magazines all over the walls with pictures of myself. My husband was nice enough to like frame all these articles about me. And even that, I was like, I'd like to get some publicity. So I'm going to figure out how to get a list of all the editors at all the music magazines. And I got a list, and I had to like keep putting more names into that list. And so I would say to myself, okay, every week I'm going to spend an hour researching 3 to 5 new people who work at different magazines. And then I would send an email saying like, this is my story. Do you think that this is interesting? And I would give them like a juicy, cool like story. And I wound up getting full page without a publicist. I had full page stories about me in Billboard, Variety, the LA Weekly, USA Today on the cover of the music section, Music Connection magazine. There were LA Week. There were many of them. You know, it was crazy. So again, it's like, what's the big goal and how do you work backwards? So part of this, that's why I started by saying, if we're so uncomfortable doing these things, you're not going to break these things into pieces. So you need to do these 2 things. You need to be kinder to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so critical, so that you can get through doing these things without giving yourself such a hard time. And then you do need to carve out the time. You need to get yourself psyched with that energy. You need to put on a playlist or listen to a podcast or talk to a certain friend or go for a run or go for a hike on the beach. Get that energy, make that a priority, and then carve these big goals into smaller actionable steps, so that instead of waking up and going, wait, what do I want to do? Okay, yeah, I want to get my songs on TV. Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do today. It's like, you do exactly what you're supposed to do today. Work it into smaller pieces. If you say to yourself, I want to get my song on TV today, your brain's not going to know what to do. It's like, that's too big of a step. That's not a step that you can control. Well, how do you break that into pieces? Okay, well, what could I be researching today? Or what co-write could I set up today? Or if I'm looking backwards from the end of the month and I want to have 2 songs recorded, what might I need to schedule today? Maybe I need to write some lyrics. Maybe I need to schedule a co-write. Maybe I need to schedule a producer session. And then from there, work backwards and get prepared for that session, so that by the end of the month, I've got 2 songs. And now I can submit those 2 songs to these 10 licensing agencies, and I can send a few off to ad agencies, and I can send a few off on my own to TV supervisors. People are waiting there right now. As you and I are sitting here talking, as we're sitting here right now talking, there are hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands, but hundreds and hundreds for sure, of music supervisors who are sitting at their desks, and they're either working on a TV show, or they're working on a movie, or they're working on a trailer, or they're working on an ad, and they're thinking to themselves right now, okay, I need to find a song that I can clear that has these kind of lyrics. And you're sitting here right now and you're like, God, I'd love to be chosen. I'd love to be that person who gets paid $85,000 to write that song. That'd be awesome. Because if I had 3 of those a year, I'd be doing so well and I'd be having a blast. And then I could write whatever other music I wanted to in my free time, because obviously I don't have to write for licensing all the time. Licensing is just one way to make a living and then help me do everything else, which is how I looked at it. And I still would then write other kinds of things. So wake up early, find the energy, make sure you carve the time, take that big goal, break it into pieces, and make sure you're sticking to that. Also, keeping yourself accountable. We talked about that before. Make sure that you keep yourself accountable. Don't let yourself off the hook, because you don't really want that. While that might seem really nice in the moment, like, I really want to get off the hook. I'll do it next week. You know, today I'm going to binge watch Game of Thrones. That's not really what you want, because what we're all searching for is more fulfillment and more meaning. And so in the moment, having fun or feeling a little happier is really not the thing that you really want to be fulfilled. What you really want is that feeling when you get out of your comfort zone and you start to see momentum. And we really forget how when you take this step forward, magically, one thing always leads to another. That's just what happens. That's just what happens. I was interviewing someone for the podcast yesterday, and she told me this story about how she went on to be an art director at a lot of famous magazines. But before that, she was telling me how she went to college and she majored in psychology, and she started working at the newspaper, the college newspaper, like at the last semester. And she realized, oh wait, I don't want to be a psychologist. I want to work at like a magazine. This is so much fun. I want to be an art director. I want to do layout. And she hadn't had any classes. She didn't have any school. And she went to Paris in the summer after she graduated from college with a friend. And she was supposed to take a class, an art class at Parsons. And when she got to the Parsons Paris location, they told her that there were not enough people registered and they weren't going to do it. And so she was in Paris with nothing to do. So she went back home and she told me this is before the internet. And I was like on the edge of my seat because it reminded me of stuff that I would do or that I did do. And she said, so I went back home, this is before the internet, and I looked in the phone book of every single US media that had an office in Paris. So every magazine, the Vogue Paris office, the Time Magazine Paris, any edition, any single entity, any magazine that was a US magazine that had a Paris location. She said, I through the phone book, I would find their address, and I didn't have the luxury of finding anybody's name because she didn't have an internet. She didn't have Google. So she said, I would go by myself to the address and walk into the lobby, and I would wait, and I would have a resume, and I was just hoping to get an internship. So she went to all these different magazines, all these different media places, walking in. And finally, she found herself in the lobby of Vogue Paris. And she said it was just right out of Devil Wears Prada. And she walked over to the receptionist in the lobby and she said, can I speak to the editor-in-chief? And she said, well, she's not here right now. She's at lunch. And this woman yesterday said to me, she said, well, when will she be back? She said, I don't know. She said, okay, I'll wait. And she was 21 years old. And she sat down on the couch in the lobby. And she said she waited a freaking long time. She waited over 2 hours. And she remembers thinking to herself, what am I doing? Like, why am I even waiting 2 hours? Like, the editor of Vogue Paris is going to walk in and I'm just going to know what I'm going to say. Like, it's bizarre. So she waits and she waits. And sure enough, she said it was right out of Devil Wears Prada, like I said. She said the woman walked in with the lipstick and the cappuccino and a little dog, right? She's like holding her little dog. And she walks in and she walks past the receptionist and she asks the woman if there's any calls that she should know about, whatever. And the woman hands her a stack of things and she's about to go to the elevator to go up to the top floor. And the receptionist says, there's a girl waiting in the lobby right there for you. Please talk to her. She's been here for like 2.5 hours. She won't leave. And so the editor of this Paris Vogue walks over to her and she goes, young lady, what are you doing here? And she said she stood up and she was like, this is my moment. And she was like, hi, my name is Nancy and I live in New York City and I'm 21 years old. And I came here because I want to be an art director at a magazine and I will do anything to work for you. Absolutely anything. So much so that I'm really uncomfortable right now, but I waited for 2 hours, over 2 hours to sit and talk to you because I'm willing to be uncomfortable to just do what I want to do. Would you please consider looking at my resume? And the woman said, I like it. I like your confidence. Let's go. And she brings her up to the top floor and she says to her, I'm going to send you over to my friend Craig. He works in decorations. Like it was like the housewares part or whatever. It was like a little tiny section where they would talk about like accessories and stuff for your home. So she goes, I'm going to send you to Craig. So she goes to Craig's office. Craig gives her a little job. It was all she needed. And she said the next 3 months, which is all she had, she was just there for the summer. She said it was like a montage from a movie. Every day, Craig would take her out. They'd get to do things. She was like finding herself in places she never imagined she would be. She got to sit and have lunches with people she never thought she'd have lunch with. And when she finished, she didn't get paid, but she had this amazing experience. She got him coffee, but she also got to work on some typography. And she got to work on a little piece of doing a little bit of the actual work. But she really learned a lot about the energy of the business and she had so much fun. And when she left, what she took with her is her boss, who worked at Paris Vogue, wrote a letter to Condé Nast, which owns a lot of the big magazines in the States. And he wrote a letter to the head of HR saying, she's awesome. We all love being around her. Give her a job. And they gave her a job at Self Magazine. Do you guys know Self Magazine? Those of you who are Americans, whatever. You see it in the checkout when you check out of the grocery store. So she started there and she worked her way up to be art director of Self Magazine. And then she worked at New Woman Magazine. Then she worked at ESPN Magazine as the art director. And then she wound up jumping ship and working at Ralph Lauren. And she worked at Ralph Lauren as the head of like art direction. So she worked on all the catalogs and she did photo shoots with like the coolest people. And it was like her job to pick the best photos and sit in front of Ralph Lauren at meetings and tell him what she liked. And her whole career just went boom, 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 boom. And she said, that day in Paris was everything. It was everything, right? And it's such a great story. And it reminds us that we have so much more control over things than we think. And she said, you know, she didn't go to art school. So there was a part of her that's like, what if they give me a job? I won't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to sit at a computer and click around in a mouse. I don't know Photoshop. She didn't know, but she figured, I trust myself that I'll learn what I need to learn. And so she wasn't overthinking it. And she learned, you know, she learned, and she had such a great story to tell. So I feel like I always kind of looked at life that way. And when I came out to LA, I would be thinking to myself, what's stopping me? It's like, I'm sitting here in my apartment on my laptop, and there are people, you know, they're just a click away. They're an email away. And I might be able to, you know, connect and get an opportunity. And maybe I should be proactive and think about what I need to write. So scheduling the time, getting out of our comfort zone, not letting ourselves off the hook, coming up with baby-sized bites of things that we can be doing every single day, from researching people we can be emailing to even walking into somebody's office if you have the gumption, and maybe you leave them a donut, you leave them a CD, and you walk out, or a USB drive, whichever one you want. Just do it all. Just do it all. Why not? Just take the action that you can possibly take. Another thing is they've done research which shows that, as much as people say that it's not true, people watch way too much TV. Like, they've done the research and they see that people will answer not honestly. Like, people will say that they watch like 2 hours of TV a week, and they don't. They watch like 12 hours of TV a week, and they know because they see people's cable boxes and they see where people turn things on and turn things off. And so the jig is up. And in 2006, I moved into a new apartment. And I made a decision that I was going to give away my TV. And I haven't bought a TV since. So I don't watch TV. And I never thought about it so like succinctly until I read an article about it. And I was like, maybe that is part of the reason I get more done. Like, there is no remote sitting around for me to even like toggle through, because I like a good TV show. Like, I could watch Real Housewives like all day long. Like, I could watch The Bachelor. I find it's like junk food for me. And I don't watch anything. So that's good. We need to proactively prioritize what needs to be done and deprioritize the stuff that's not important, right? And so that's something to think about. Also, as far as your own energy is concerned, keeping those energy levels up, they've done research to find out that you have to take a break. You have to take a break every hour. Every hour. If you want to be super productive, at the end of every hour, you should either stretch for 5 to 10 minutes or go get a drink or walk outside. And for sure, every 90 minutes, you need to give yourself a little pause. So that's something just interesting to think about. Also, before you sit down and you're like, okay, Cathy said I should research a couple of supervisors or look at some ad agencies, or I should do some lyrics or set up a co-write. Before you begin, you should take 5 minutes and decide for yourselves, like, what results do you want out of this task? And that is something that's really important. They've actually done research with kids in the classroom, and they found out that it wasn't the IQ, it was this thing called executive function. And executive function is when somebody sits down, they're about to take a test, they breathe for a minute. They don't just like rush in, they're nervous, they're taking the test. They take a second, they pause, they maybe look over the entire exam. Maybe they strategize, like, I'm going to do this section first because that's a no-brainer. Then I'm going to come back and do this section. They put their pencils to the right. They take a drink of water. That's called executive function. They found that kids who could pause and sort of get mindful before they just like blast into an activity, they were much, much more successful. And so we don't want to be reacting all the time. We want to be thinking and be proactively like deciding things and making intentional decisions. So take a few minutes before you do something, and then you might notice, oh, I am feeling so uncomfortable or nervous. So let me let that go right now. Let me remind myself it doesn't have to be enough, or whatever's going to work for you in that moment. So now I can remember, why am I doing this? What's the result that I want? And then that 5 minutes of like sort of pausing might get you so much more out of the time. And that's really the discussion that we're having, is how do you work smarter so you can get more done in less time? When people don't do what I'm talking about right now, everything I'm talking about is working on your business more than working in your business. When you're just working in your business and you're just like in the mine and you're digging for coal, you're not seeing like the big picture, right? And so what a lot of people do is they don't work on the business. They don't think about what's the end goal? Okay, well, how do I break that into pieces? Or what do I really want to do? Okay, so this is more of a priority than this. So they're not doing that. So what winds up happening is months go by and they sort of like throw spaghetti at the wall, and they just feel inclined to do something this day, and they feel inclined to do something that day. And some days they're feeling bummed and they get nothing done. And some days they're feeling excited and they get a little bit of something done. And it's not even the thing that they're supposed to write because they didn't proactively think about it. So they just wrote a song, but then that's not a song that'd be good for licensing. And it's not a song that their fans wanted. So it's not something they're going to play on tour, but they had a little energy and they wrote something, but they spend the time doing something that actually isn't what they should have spent their time on. So it's about working smart. Another thing that you can do is reward yourself by like set up your work area in a way where you're like most excited, like that part of the house, that's the part of the house that you declutter. Or you get like, you know, you go get your favorite drink. Like for me in the morning, I treat myself to like my favorite coffee shop and I get like the most delicious latte, and then I go sit down and like power up, you know, and it's like I give myself that reward, and that $4 that I spend on that drink, it goes a long way because it's a fun way to like wire my brain to feel excited. What else? I'm looking at my notes. So break your large project into smaller tasks. Declutter your office space, get excited about sitting down. Don't beat yourself up. Remember that good enough is good enough, so you're not so uncomfortable. Take a break every hour, take a walk. And that is really, really important because I do tend to walk every single day. And I remember that Steve Jobs was famous for like taking a walk. And there is something about like putting your phone down and just let there be space, right? Just take a walk. Just look at this tree, look at this house, listen to your feet clicking along the floor. And what happens is you make space to let in new ideas, to maybe be inspired. And then when you go back, you're like, oh, I had a new thought, rather than jamming up your brain constantly with one particular monologue, and then there's no space for anything else. So taking a walk, getting some vitamin D, feeling the world around you, those are some good things. So let's see. That really is. Oh, and one thing I can say about TV, I talked about how we need to deprioritize what we don't need and prioritize the things that are really important. One thing about TV is maybe you can reward yourself, you know, say to yourself, I do want to watch this show, but I'm gonna spend this hour working on my stuff, and then I'm gonna reward myself Sunday night. I'm gonna binge watch 3 episodes, you know, whatever it is. There will definitely be downtime, but I think one thing is for sure, people totally underestimate how much you can get done with consistent small actions. We forget that every skyscraper was built brick by brick, and every sonnet is built, you know, note by note and word by word. So we need to think about what is it that makes you so uncomfortable, and how do you hack that? How do you allow yourself more freedom and more creativity? When you were a kid, and I'll just say this, and then I want to take your questions, but when we were all kids, the reason that we love music or whatever it is that a person loves is because that's the thing that you let yourself just play. You let yourself just breathe, and it makes it fun. But when you're writing and you have this like criticalness that comes up, it's almost impossible to have fun, right? You just have this judge standing over you. So I think if we can let good enough be good enough, maybe we can then sit down for once, for real, look at 2018 and say, what are the things I want to accomplish? How do I break that into smaller pieces? What are the things I should be doing? And then I'm actually going to do them. And I won't be so uncomfortable emailing a person at an ad agency. I won't be so uncomfortable writing a song because I'll remind myself that I don't have to be perfect. And that'll help a lot. And by getting some momentum and moving forward, I'm going to be exhilarated because I'm going to see myself getting out of my comfort zone, and growth is oxygen for the soul. So there is a reward for getting out of your comfort zone. Yeah, it might be uncomfortable and you might have to stomach that, but you will be rewarded because a part of you will be like, I am braver than I thought, and that's amazing, and I just grew, and now look what else I could do. Okay, so let me click over here to the chat. I didn't have it open. I mean, I had it open, but I wasn't reading it because I was reading my notes. So now I'm looking through. Good morning, everybody. Great. I'm just looking through what you're saying. So if you haven't already and you have a question, then post it. And then I can unmute you and we can talk. You could ask me anything. It doesn't have to be on, what we were just talking about in terms of time hacks and getting out of our own way and breaking things into pieces and productivity. You can ask me anything you want. So let me know. I'm waiting to see your questions. So what else is going on? I'm waiting for questions to roll in. If you guys want, you could also raise your hand. If you want, I'll look for that also. I'll just keep looking until somebody either raises your hand or asks me a question. In the meantime, tell me what you're doing for the holidays. It's a nice time of year. It's a magical time of the year. I see people are just joining us now. We just talked about getting more done in less time, being more productive. And now I said that I was going to take questions. So I'm just looking to see if anybody raises their hand or asks me a question. And if not, then I'll let you guys go. But I hope that this was helpful. I think that we have to start taking responsibility. I think that it's so easy to have this running dialogue about, well, this is the reason I don't do it. I have a kid, and everyone knows when you have a kid, you can't get stuff done. It's like, you absolutely can. Or this is the reason I don't get stuff done. I have a boyfriend who puts me down, or I have this, or it's like, none of that really holds water. We have the ability to get so much accomplished. And when we make it our responsibility, it's actually the opposite of discouraging. It's so empowering because nothing can stand in our way at that point. I see that Zion raised his hand. So I'm just waiting because I see he's talking to somebody. What's up, Zion?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, and Zion is a great example of this because you sent me a video yesterday. I think that is
Did you get
idea. Yes, and I was like, this morning, one of the things I was going to do was write you back and tell you I think you can absolutely do that. And I was so impressed with, you're so delicious. Like your energy is always so great and sweet and generous. And I think that that's such a smart idea. And I was even going to tell you that I would be happy to endorse you and tell people that they should do it.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And
anyway,
I guess my
what
question.
What do you want to say?
Thank you so much. I was glad that you were able to get that. I think my biggest question is just very general. You remember a week ago or 2 weeks ago, you had somebody on that was just super vulnerable and basically almost was in tears about, not knowing if they needed to keep going on and keep doing it.
Yeah. I
think I'm kind of in that critical point where my reserves are running out and the success I'm having I feel like I'm on the cusp of so many great things. And so I'm trying my best to figure out solutions to not have to go back to the 9-to-5 job, which I left a year and a half ago. And so I'm just wondering, did you ever have that experience where you were just like, that you have the potential to do some amazing things. You've got all these ideas. You just need a little bit of time to just to stay with it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the time. It's like being an entrepreneur working for yourself, it's constant. It's constant. Every single year, I feel like I reinvent myself completely because it's like that. There's a book called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
And, it's like the mouse just keeps going to the same part of the maze and the cheese is over here now. And you've got to like get with the program. And so many times that's had to happen in my life. It's like I first started and I want to get a record deal. I had day jobs, by the way, at the time, even when I had a record deal, because you don't get paid more than your little advance. Then I got dropped. Thank God I still had my day job. Then I started working on licensing, still had a day job, then finally left my day job. And then after 2 years, my licensing agent, we had like a really good run. It was like really like it was sort of a tease because we had such a good run. Then he left. And then I couldn't find an agent to replicate the success that he had. And so I'd already quit my job and I was like, okay, I guess I have to be my own agent, And then I was like working super hard. And then I had to write more music, and I was running out of reserves. And then just as I was like running out of reserves, I was like stepping it up with like trying to get into people's offices and trying to make connections. And I was working super hard, and like nothing motivates you more than like that feel of like, I don't want to go back to something I don't want. And then that started to take off, and then that was great. And then it was like, wait a minute. I mean, actually, as I was building and writing my own music, and that was taking off, I thought then I would get another record deal. I thought, now I've had all these licenses, now I'll get another record deal. And so actually, when I was writing to Billboard and Variety and all these magazines, I was not hoping that they would write a story about my licensing success. I was hoping that they would review the record. I was hoping that they would talk about all these songs, and then they didn't. They didn't want to review the record. They wanted to talk about the fact that I hustled and made myself my own income. And I was like, that's not going to get people to listen to my record. And then what that did is people started to email me and ask me if I would help them pitch their songs. And I was saying like, no, go away. No. And then it was like, who moved my cheese? I was like, wait a minute. Maybe I'm supposed to do this. And so then I got an LLC, and I started to rep other people. And then by repping other people and letting music supervisors know that now I was an agent and I had more resources to offer them, they started to come to me more for my own music. And then I got even more licenses because I just got more requests, because they thought, maybe Cathy has this. And I was like, why didn't you send this to me before ever?
Right.
And they realized, oh, you have other sides of you, and you have other music of yours. And then I started making more of a living, because now I had more of my own songs placed. Plus I made some commission on helping other artists. That was good. And then I started being asked to speak all the time. And then I thought maybe I should start a course. And my first course was, I just threw something up there. I did it over like Skype. I told people like, I'll meet you. And I was meeting with like 20 people, and I didn't have any like slideshows or curriculum. I was just talking to people, and it was all sort of just like a fun, like from the heart. And then I said, maybe I should rent a theater. And so I called a theater in LA. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, can I rent the space? And it was so expensive. It was like $1,000. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And then I finally found a theater that was like, you could rent us Tuesday mornings or Sunday mornings, and it's only a few $100s. I was like, okay. And then they said, but you have to rent it at least for 6 times, So I was like, okay, that's going to be like $800, but I'll do it. And so I was like, I'll rent the theater, and then I'll call music supervisors and see if they want to come speak. And then they all said yes. And I went, whoa, that's weird. Now I have a way into them, because they wanted to be interviewed. So I was like, this is so cool. Like, I can have them come speak, and then people will come, and that'll be really smart, because these artists want to meet these people, and these people say yes when I ask them to come speak. And then I thought, maybe I should do this online, because there's so many other people out there. And so that kind of, like every
It just kept moving. The cheese on opportunities kept.
Yeah, and then somebody, Amy Loftus said to me last year, she's like, you should do a podcast. I'm like, yeah, good, yes. And so I added that to my plate, and I started a podcast. And then the podcast, like within a week, I got an email from this woman who's a lit agent. She's like, you should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, add that to the plate. So what? I have a newborn and 2 other kids and a life and so much. Let's just do that. And so I started working on the book, because I'm always like, I wouldn't say 1 step ahead. I'm always like 8 steps ahead, constantly diversifying myself, constantly thinking, what is the next thing that I could also do? Just like you sent me in that email, that is the right way to think about it. It's like, how else could I be getting to my goal, right? And so for years, it was all music, and you heard that whole evolution.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think what happened to me personally is after I had a couple hundred placements, I just wasn't, it didn't do anything. It didn't register anymore. Like this last year, I had my song on a few shows, a few ads, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't do it anymore for me, because once you've had like a couple McDonald's spots, Target, Walmart, KFC, like Hasbro, T-Mobile, Quaker Oats, you're just like, okay, it's another ad. I know that sounds like awful to say, but it stops being like such a rush. And so I personally had conquered that goal. I checked that goal off the box. I needed to do something else. Right. So teaching then for me became like, this is amazing. People are feeling so gratified. That's so cool. And in our 1.0 class, the class that's been for a year, you've seen recently people started getting licenses, and we've had like 18, 19, 20 people are like got their first license. So that's awesome. And for some of those people, we help them get that license, which is awesome. And from those classes that I did when I was renting that theater, we've had several people go on to now have huge careers from that, which is insane. That's to awesome. Me. Like John Kleinbell was like ready to give up. He was done. He was so done. He was so frustrated. And I was like, dude, I get it. You got to hold on. Like, you got to keep going. And then he's so happy now. He's getting paid. He's doing huge licenses. He's got ads. He's got TV shows. And now he's also producing, though. He's one step ahead. So he's also being paid to produce. So he's got all that stuff going on. And his day job is like far in his rearview mirror.
That's so cool. I that's really encouraging to me, because I feel like I began the hustle of chasing this. I want to get placements. I want to get those sync placements, and I know that they're my future. I have no doubt in my mind, but I haven't got that yet. And so there's this feeling like I've got to somehow accomplish that before I start this next passion. But this passion keeps screaming at me saying, you need to be doing this. And I feel like that's kind of what my
I think that you're so smart. This is what entrepreneurs have to do, okay? Like, this is exactly it. And you should do that, okay? By the way, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. I'll let you let the cat out of the bag when you want to. But without saying directly what it's about, I will give you a little feedback, which is you are an amazing producer. We listen to hundreds. Now we have another full-time employee, Victoria, and we have a couple interns always, but Victoria's full-time and Sonnet is full-time and I'm full-time. We listen to hundreds of songs. Your songs stand out. They're so good. They sound like Charlie Puth meets Eric Hutchinson. The recording is great. The melodies are great.
Thank you so much.
You have the gift. It's just true. I just tell it like it is. But you have this gift that not every producer has. Even Billy, who's just like, I love, he'll tell you flat out. Maybe he sells himself short, actually, but he'll be like, I'm not a songwriter. I'm not a songwriter. Like, he always says that. I produce, I'm not a songwriter. And he sometimes, I think, I try to give him some encouragement sometimes, because like he'll be in his own way, because I'll be like, come on, write with me today. And like, we'll be in the studio and he's like, no, don't listen. I had a lyric idea. Yeah, forget it. I'm not saying it. I'll be like, I had an idea for a melody. No, I'm not going to say it. He gets so nervous because he's around great songwriters all the time and he thinks of himself as like not good enough. But you have this ability. You're like a triple threat. You can be in the studio working and producing somebody's track, and then you can also help them with melodies and lyrics. Like, you're a great songwriter. People need that so badly. He's making a freaking fortune. I send so many people his way. I'd be happy to send people to you. We've probably sent him, I don't know, 45, 50 artists in the last year. I'm not joking. Like, honestly, like, he's always calling me like, Kath, you're the Christmas gift that keeps giving. Like, you send me so much work. I'm like, well, I send work to him. I send work to Adrian. I send work to Rich Jacks. I send work to the people I love. You would be an amazing resource. People would be lucky to get to work with you. You're also the sweetest.
Thank you so much. You
couldn't be sweeter. You have to do this. This is what I want you to remember. I remember, do I have it here? Do I have this? Hang on.
Sorry, everybody, for taking the time up.
So this is this magazine of Billboard that I was in, right? Woohoo! I was fancy once.
Amazing.
And hang on, I want to show you this. So this is the article. Look at me in my sexy skirt. Not bad, guys. Full page story in Billboard. Yes. Also, look at the title of the cover, Triumph of the Indie Hustle. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that that's the cover story? Anyways, I remember, the reason I pulled that out, I remember my husband, he had his best friend over. His best friend is so opposite. My husband is the opposite of me, the opposite of anybody he's like straight, narrow, slow, steady. He's an attorney. He's quiet. He's an introvert. He thinks about everything a million times before he buys a pair of shoes. He spent 3 months looking everywhere and making sure they're like the most practical. Like, we are opposite. And his best friend is more like me, but even more extreme. He's like a total street kid, street smarts, hustler. He's always got a million things going. He went to law school, but he doesn't practice as a lawyer. He manages a boxer. He owns a baseball team. He does like baseball card sale. He does like everything, and he has a blast, and he's always making money and whatever. He was over at the house sitting next to me and my husband, and he was looking at this, right? And he's leafing, he's like, I don't know if you can see, I don't know. He's leafing through the magazine, right? Like this. And he's reading it and he goes, Cathy, what are you doing with this? I go, I don't know. My husband said he would frame it for me. Isn't that nice? He goes, don't frame it. That's not what you should be doing with this. Enough. Fine. Frame it. Don't frame it. What are you going to do about it? I said, I'm going to feel good that they wrote a story about me. He said, no, you're going to start a business. You're going to help other artists. Are you insane? Are you nuts? I go, I'm not going to start a business. Don't you think I have to keep establishing myself? I haven't gotten the record deal yet. Like, I had it. I got dropped. I'm trying to get back to that point. I'm trying to become Ingrid Michaelson. I'm trying to become Christina Perri. That was the goal. I want to be Colby Calais. I want to tour. He's like, you're not seeing it. He's like, the world just told you you're good at this thing, right? So he's like, there's opportunities. There's all these tentacles now that stem from this. You need to open an agency. And I didn't go out and open an agency. It took me a whole year and 3 months because I thought to myself, that sucks. Why would I be an agent? Like, I'm an artist. And I had all this mental stuff about it. Like, if I'm an agent, I'm not cool anymore. I'm not an artist because I'm an agent. And if I'm an agent, music supervisors won't take me seriously. I had all this like nonsense. And I also felt like crushed. And I remember Billy Loeffler saying to me, you really should be an agent. And I was like, ew, he like doesn't think I'm talented. And he's like, no, you'll still write your own songs. Like, you're just also a really good agent because you know how to like do those things where you just like somehow get yourself into these people's offices. And a year or so later, I thought, actually, to be honest, we're totally bros and it's all good. But Billy and I had an argument once. Like, it happens because we were working together so closely. I was so mad at him. And I thought, maybe I'll never go back to the studio. Maybe it's over for me. Maybe I'll just become an agent. And so actually that argument was like the best thing that ever happened. And then I decided to start an agency. And then, of course, 3 weeks later, we were friends again. I was like, I did it. I was so mad at you. I thought I wasn't going to write another song. So I started an agency. I got an LLC, whatever. But it wasn't true. I only got more. If you look, I mean, you could look through records. You could look like the records I put out and when I put them out. You could look at ads and when my ads were released. But it was after I opened my agency that I only had like 3 times the amount of work. Like, my biggest career successes happened after I opened my own agency for myself as an artist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Those are my biggest days. And so that's interesting, And so, no, I don't think it's about like, well, it has to be in this order. It's like, don't know how it's going to happen.
I'm so systematic in how I think that I'm having to break some of that when it comes to entrepreneuring. And I mean, it's like God's putting all these things in place. I mean, if you want to get spiritual about it, but one of my best friends right now he's a notary. Okay. A notary. He was doing it as a side job and he decided, you know what? I'm getting really, really good at being a notary in Phoenix. Okay. Which doesn't even pay fee. Every state law is different. And he decided to start an online course, and he's building this empire of notariness. And he and I talk constantly about kind of like what you're saying about a side hustle, like doing something that you start off as this and you do that, and then that becomes actually better than this.
Yeah.
And I'm having to break this idea that, because for the longest time, I just wanted to be a songwriter. In fact, I've always told everybody, I don't want to be a producer. I only produce because I can't afford a producer. So I had to learn how to do it. And I keep getting I actually get a lot of comments. People say, I think you're a better producer than you are a songwriter. And I hate that. I want to be a songwriter. But maybe, I guess what I'm saying is I think I need to just open myself up to opportunities.
Yeah, because you don't know where things are. It's like our job is to be, there's a book my dad showed me years ago and I never read it, but he told me what it's about. It's called Flow. And it's about like just trying to be in alignment where the flow is, right? And so I think that we sort of get directed, and it is spiritual, but it also is literal. You know, things happen and you get directed in a certain way, and our job is just to like align with that. And I think I told you guys when I was signed to 2 record labels, and I was dropped from both of them. And one of them was with Interscope, and I was with Ron Fair, and I was with him one night. He was recording Paparazzi for Lady Gaga, and I was sitting there, and it was like an interesting night for sure. And he told me the story about how he really wanted to be a songwriter, and he had met with Bill Conti, who did the music for Rocky, and they were having a conversation one night. And Bill said to him, you know, I like you. You're a good kid. I want to give you some really good advice, and I hope that you'll hear it as a compliment. And Ron said to him, what is it? He said, you're a good songwriter, but you're an amazing producer, and you're a better producer than you are a songwriter. You're good. You're a good songwriter, but your producing is like insane. And if you
Oh no, you
was one of the best producers of our time. And so he told me that. And he said, wow. I went on to become, you know, a full-time producer, and it worked out really well for him, obviously. But I think, you know, in my own life, I've had to listen, you know, really listen. And I just keep a year that it's been out, and I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface yet, but it feels like I'm on the cusp of like what I'm really supposed to be doing in the world. And I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I was going to have a podcast and write a book and tour around the world talking to people about the fact that they matter and that they should find more purpose, I'd be like, that's so weird. Like, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to write songs. And, you know, I mean, it's just follow those whispers. And open as many doors as you can. Don't overthink it. And it doesn't mean that just because you have these 3 doors open, that the 4th one won't open, and then that's the one really that's going to pop. Like, pop as many kernels as you can. How do you know what's going to happen? I absolutely didn't know when I started an agency that because I now had an agency, people would now ask me for more of my music. And I definitely didn't know that when I started a class, it would actually be the single best way for us to meet supervisors, because it's like people like to talk about themselves. Even now, you know, in the Access course, we pay them a small fee. It's like $200 or $300 to come speak for an hour. And we have a line of 30 people who are dying to do it. It's like, okay, like they're dying to do it. Dying. Like they think it's the most fun. And Billy, he was like, I want to do it again. I loved it. I'm like, okay. Like, you know, like I think people just love to feel important and significant, and they see how cool all the artists are. And so how do you know what's going to happen? Like maybe you start to teach people how to produce things, or you work on producing things more, and maybe through that you work on a track, or you just don't know. You just don't know. So instead of like not doing anything, since you don't know and you have all these ideas of what could go wrong, we have to be entrepreneurs. I mean, Ari is like as far as music goes, like he's always diversifying himself, you know, in every different way he can. So for music, had to work a day job in a while but it's all music. Even, you know, it's interesting, like his book, which got him.
You're cutting out there for some reason.
Record, but it got him a lot more. So it's interesting, right? It's like he wrote a book about the business, and then more people started listening to his music. So it just goes to show, like every day our jobs are to wake up and be like, what could I do? What can I get to work on? Where can I create? Where can I show up? What other value can I add to the world? And things will, you know, start to align themselves.
It's kind of like the putting away of I like that, taking your ego and setting it aside.
Yeah.
Because I have it's so stupid. It's just, you get wrapped up in this idea of who you're supposed to be, that you don't listen to all the opportunities of what you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'm so excited for you,
Thank you.
and that I think that could be a very, very good road to go down, and I hope that you will take the plunge in that in 2018.
Thank
And
you.
then
I
let me
will.
know, because like you've got me as a huge fan of yours, not just because of your work, because of like the exceptional person you are. So I'd be happy to, put that word out because people do need to know that stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes. Who else wants to talk to me, ask me anything, or talk to me about anything? All right, I'm gonna just read your questions in the chat. Let's see what you're saying. Let's see. Robin said, at this point in the industry, going into 2018, how likely is it to land a placement or reaching out to supervisors versus an agent with the connections pitching? I know the Soup's inboxes are more flooded than ever. We'll be pursuing both, of course. Again, I would say do them both because they're all humans, right? It's not like you're feeding something into a computer that spits you out as a decimal point, and if you don't land on this side of the decimal, you're out. It's all connecting with people, making relationships. So just like I talked about earlier with that girl who I talked to yesterday, she just walked into Paris Vogue and made a relationship with this editor, and she put her in this section, and the rest of her career was history. I would be doing them both. One thing I like about reaching out to ad agencies is there's so many of them, right? Like when there's TV shows, it's like Jen Piken is the music supervisor for This Is Us. So it's Jen Piken. Everybody reaches out to her, And there are like 4 people who work at Chop Shop. Alexandra Patsavas and Casey and Brittany and Justin, and that's it. And they work on 7 shows. So those people get inundated. But ad agencies, there's like hundreds of them. And at the ad agency, there's like 5 broadcast producers, and then there's 3 creative directors. So there's so many more people who are less inundated, right? Because there's just more, it's a wider net. So you can make a relationship with this one broadcast producer at the Ogilvy in the Czech Republic. And then you get a spot there. Like we did an ad, Sonnet posted it. We did an ad for the Highfields in Chile, right? A few months ago. It's like, that was $18,000. And it was in Chile. Like how many people do you know reaching out to those music supervisors in Chile? How many people do you know reaching out to the music supervisors in Prague and Germany and Paris and Italy? Like it's like I've done several ads with music supervisors in Australia, and there's so many more I could be reaching out to. In fact, every time I have free time, I'm like, oh my God, I could have reached out. I could have done some research. I could have reached out to, oh well, okay, tomorrow's another day, But I would think about that. Like absolutely, I would be reaching out to music. So they're not. So here's something just so you know for the inside scoop. Ad agencies sometimes don't have a music supervisor. It depends. Ad agencies you can still reach out to. What you want to do is reach out to their broadcast producers, right? So broadcast is different than print, obviously. Print looks like this, right? There's no music in here, not that I can hear, right? So some ads are print and some ads are for broadcast, right? So they're either online, that's a whole nother department, or they're broadcast, they're TV ads. Well, you want to reach out to their broadcast producers. And what you can do is you Google and you say, broadcast producer, Leo Burnett, broadcast producer, Ogilvy, broadcast producer, Gray, broadcast producer, Arnold, broadcast producer, Saatchi and Saatchi, broadcast producer. There's so many ad agencies. You can go to Adweek and you can look at the coolest ad agencies. Lots of names come up on LinkedIn. By Googling, you see a lot of what's on LinkedIn, even if you don't have a LinkedIn account, which I don't even have. I would just Google broadcast producer. You know what? Hang on. I'll show you what I do with you, and I'll show you how I do this. And I've been doing this since the beginning of my career. Well, it says start share. Okay. I want Okay, let me do this. Hang on. How come that's not working? Share. Wait, no. What do you guys see? Do you guys see Google? Yeah? Okay. So I would go to Google and I would write, hello. Okay, so check this out. So I would go to Google and I broadcast producer Leo Burnett. Okay. You see this girl? See this girl? This girl? This girl? I don't know these people. So what I would then do is I would take a name that doesn't have a hyphen just because you want to try to crack the email code, okay? So like this name, Leah, right? Leah Karabinik. So then I would go to my email and I would do this. Leah, can you guys see my email now or no? And I would write leah.karabenik@leoburnett.com. Okay? Then I would go here and I would write lkarabenik@leoburnett.com. Do you see what I did? Okay. So I know that it's one of those two email addresses. That's how they do it. It's got to be one of those two. And if she's not there, it doesn't matter because I'm not just going to email her. I'm going to email like 10 people, right? So let's do another one. You could do broadcast producer Arnold worldwide. Okay, let's see. Oh, another thing you can do. By the way, you will find just by watch. Here we go. All these people, all these people, all these people. So if it says senior broadcast producer, right? This guy, so he's working on advertising, right? So all of the producers, they can either do one of two things. They can either tell you who you need to forward your email to actually. They could say, oh, we're actually working with this music supervisor. Or they'll say, cool, that is my job. Like at ad agencies, all the broadcast producers have different roles, and some of them have to work on the budget and the music, and you'll find your way. That's what I've done my whole career. Like Alex Stern at Leo Burnett, that's how I found him. The other thing you can do is you can write like biggest ad agencies, and you could do it by city, or you could do it like worldwide. Okay, so look at this. Look at all this. Publicists, right? Let's take Publicists, for example. Now you can do Publicists, ad agency, right? Okay, now look. You could go to their homepage, and then you could figure out where all of their offices are by going to their homepage. So you can go to, usually they have an offices tab. Hang on. Let's see. Oh, it's right here. So let's look at, this is San Francisco because that's the closest one. We actually did the T-Mobile spot with the one in Seattle, but let's just look at the United States. Okay, there's all your Publicis offices in the US. Okay, so now here's Publicis New York. There's two. Here's Publicis in Charlotte. Okay, view contacts. Come on. Why is my internet slow? Go. Okay, I don't know why that's not going. Let's try this one. Oh, they're underneath. Sorry. Wait, why don't they come? Anyway, it doesn't matter. You can find them another way. So let's say now you know Publicis has a Minneapolis office, right? So you open your Google and you write broadcast producer, Publicis, Minneapolis. There you go. If you look at this, right? Oh, and that was interesting. This guy, Michael, where was he? This guy, Michael Todd. Oh, forget it. Hang on. You don't really need to join LinkedIn. And then what happens is you start to find other things, right? Like Fallon is a huge agency in Minnesota. So now you're like, what's that? What's Fallon? Okay, and you can get around this. Watch. You can write broadcast producer, Fallon. Okay, so look. So this guy, Ted, he works at Fallon. He's a good person to email. This guy, Jimmy, he works at Fallon. And then, of course, Michael Fallon, maybe you don't want to email him. Like, he might not answer your email. She's a coordinating producer at NBC. It's like, I don't even know what that is. Now we're on to something else. But the other thing, I mean, there's just so many ways to look at this. I think I've showed you guys this. You can go to Advertalog, okay? And you don't have to have a membership. And you can go to, you see there's like a scroll bar right here, and it talks about the radio, promo. So you'd go to TV Cinema, right? And you can now search it by all the different brands, okay? But let's look at this Coca-Cola ad for a second. So it tells you the agency is Brother. Brother's a great agency, okay? And look what's under here. Okay, this is the copywriter. This is the producer, Rich Carter, right? You see that? And this is the creative director. So you could Google, hit this guy. You could also Google, where did he go? Rich Carter. Look at this. Now here's a little article about him, right? You might read that article and then email him, and you're like, Kath, I don't have his email. I'm like, right, either do I. I showed you what you do. You would write rick.carter@brother, or you write rcarter@brother. You'll find it. It's not that hard. So here he is, right? I mean, and remember I said at Adweek? So you can go to adweek.com. They talk about all different kinds of things. They talk about different agencies. They show you different ads that are going on. They show you like what the 10 best ads of 2017. Well, that's a good article to read, right? Here's the 10 best ads of 2017. And this is the director, Mike Diva. And this, you're going to read this. You're going to find out who the agency is, okay? Oh, that's so funny. I interviewed these guys on my podcast, the Halo Top guys. Anyways, here's an agency, McCann, New York. We had the McCann music supervisor in the Access course. I was there personally at their offices. So now you know they're doing Nespresso. And this, you could spend a whole day with this article. You see that, right? You could spend a whole day looking at this article. Oh, BBDO. Okay, maybe I'm going to email them and tell them I watched this ad and how cool it was. It's nonstop. It's nonstop. But I'm glad that we actually did that, because I spent my life, I still do that stuff. And there's so many people there, and there's so much you could be researching. So when people tell me, like, I wanted this and it didn't happen, I'm like, what'd you do? And they're like, well, I tried everything. What'd you try? Tell me about it. Tell me what you tried. And people are like, well, I wrote some music, I had an agent, and I gave up. I'm like, great. So that's not enough, right? It's like, what else can you do? You know, can you find other people to email, reach out to? So the answer to your question, Robin, is no, it's not overly saturated. I mean, it might be overly saturated in the TV world, but also remember, TV placements are going to be. We just got a placement for Jacob Fartucci. Anyone know him? Do you guys know Jacob? No, he was in our first class. He just got 10 grand. We got him last Thursday. Way to go us. Way to go Jacob for a TV placement. That's a lot for TV. You know, I like ads because it's like, I want to be able to get more done in less time. So ads pay much better. And those people are not inundated. They're just not. There's just too many of them, which is great. There's so many ads out there. There's so many agencies out there. Start breaking that into pieces and getting to work, and tell me what happens. Okay? Okay. What else is going on? Sam said, Cathy, don't the ad agencies in the USA have in-house composers? Okay, let's break that down. Composers wouldn't be the same thing you're competing with, right? So some ads are going to use an instrumental, and some ads the director is going to want a song, and they're not going to use an in-house composer for that. They're going to use a song. They're going to license a song. So they have different budgets and they have different kinds of creative. Some of the creative is so beautiful. The picture, images to lead. He just wants something that's going to support it. He wants an instrumental track composed by the in-house composer. It's not relevant because there's so much of the other thing going on that we submit for every single day. There's going to be a chunk of ads that are just going to have songs that are going to be licensed. You said you talked to 2 composers now. Both said they end up with multiple roles, like finding and learning songs. Yeah, I mean, composers definitely can have that in, but it's not really something that needs to discourage because there's just enough pie for everybody. There's going to be some ads. They're going to need like an artist. They're just going to want a song that feels like a song. There's going to be some ads where they're going to want just an instrumental lick or even like a, what do they call it? I just forgot. There's a name for, it's not a jingle. There's a name for something else and I just forgot it. But there's like a fancy word that I wouldn't even be able to spell and I just forgot what it is. But it's not a logo visually, it's like a logo sonically, and it goes sometimes at the beginning or the end of an ad, and there's a name for that, and I'm forgetting now what the name of it is, but sometimes they want one of those, and they don't need the artist, like a songwriter, to do that. Anyway, you guys, it's not a sonic something. It's not like, I want to say like Enigma, but it's not Enigma, but it's a word like that. I just don't know why. I don't remember what it is. Shoot, I wish I could say it. It sounds so fancy, and I used to know what I'm talking about with that. Anyways, I hope that you guys actually feel inspired to get to work. So I'm going to let you go, and maybe you can spend the next 30 minutes instead of listening to me talk, getting onto Google, finding some broadcast producers. In fact, we should make a spreadsheet in our class and you guys can trade like who you find and who you like. And maybe you can use my tactic of being an agent, not to say that you're an agent, but you could say, I've got music and I collaborate with a group of artists who are always working on stuff for ads, and they're smart and they're easy to work with and they're easy to clear. Please let me know what you need. Try it. But get to work. There's so many people to be emailing. Don't use the not having an email address as an excuse. You'll figure out how to get them. There's only 1 or 2 ways that emails go. It's either like first name dot last name at the name of the agency, or it's first letter, first initial, last name. You'll find it in like 3 tries. You can BCC the other 2 and you'll see which ones bounce back, and boom. Send some emails today. Be personable though. Be personable. Say like, hey, my name is Zion, and I'm loving this ad that I just saw, and I live in Arizona, and I can't believe it's not even sweater weather, and I wanted to send you a song or 2, and I hope that you have a blessed day. Just trying to say something a little out of the box, and don't be lengthy, and do it many times and see what happens, and maybe you'll feel encouraged, okay? But there's so much you can be doing, so much. And the more responsibility we take for it, the more invigorated we become. And it's amazing. It's like the world is your oyster. I can't wait to hear all your success stories. If you did this every day a little bit, your 2018 will blow your mind. It will blow your mind. And I know because I've done it, and I know because I've done it, and I'm not the most talented person I know. I'm just like this person who just has a lot of gumption, and you can have that gumption. And now I'm so glad I shared my screen with you and showed you some of my tricks. It's like, so go to Advertalog, watch some stuff. You can't watch it in Advertalog if you don't have an account, so you don't need it. Just go to Advertalog to find out what the spots are called, and then go to YouTube to watch the spot. But in Advertalog, you can find out, if you click on TV Cinema, who the people are who work there. So that's really cool. And then you can start just coming up with what are the big agencies. You're going to find there's like 20. It's like Ogilvy, Publicis, JWT, Leo Burnett, and then you'll find all their little offices all over the world, and you'll find some broadcast producers, and you'll start making some waves, and you'll be off to the races. Good? Good. So you've got 26 minutes now where you can work instead of listening to me. And then I'll ask Sonnet to put up a Google Doc, because wouldn't you be excited if like you put down a few names and somebody else did some research and put down a few names, and then you could help each other? Like, why the hell not? Remember, like, there's nothing, like you see even right now, I take my relationships and I introduce people, right? Let's do that. More will always come back. Nothing to be afraid of. You'll never lose what's supposed to be yours. So let's share with each other, inspire each other, help each other. Yeah, you guys are gonna rock and roll. So, okay, I will see you guys soon. I hope this was helpful. And Zion, I'll be looking for your announcement. Okay? Okay. All right, talk to you soon. Bye. Bye, guys.